music that we tighten up with. First, we tighten up on the drum. All right now, drummer. Come on now. Now tighten it up. Oh, yeah. Tighten up on that drum now. Now let that bass fall in now. Come on, baby. Oh, yeah. Everybody tighten up now.
Thursday, 8:07 p.m., August 6th. You're listening to Enemies of the State with your hosts Scott Clark and Matt Collins.
Holla.
This is episode 1. Podcast about.
You have to excuse Scott. He's still learning the music. You can still play it. We can still have some background noise while we're doing the introduction, you know?
Well,
people want to hear. A little tighten it up. Tighten it up.
All right, let's tighten it up here. Tighten up this podcast right now. Just trying to have a conversation about a stateless society, what the state is, how the state affects our lives. Can we exist without it? What does the world look like without it?
What state? What are you talking about?
The state, the government, the state.
Well, you know.
So the state is any.
Are you talking about the state like Virginia, or you're talking about the state of the Union?
I'm talking about the state, which is an organized institution which determines, however it decides or claims legitimacy, that gets support from a large segment of your friends and neighbors, and thereby uses that support from your friends and neighbors to dictate policy, to sort of tell you how you run your life. That's what the state is. It's a gang of thieves writ large, as Mary Rothbard said. So this is what the state is.
Well, you know,
I can't see it any other way.
The state of Virginia or the state of California, any of those states here in a minute. You know, when there's only one, they get your support whether you really give it to them or not. So when you say, I don't give support to the government at all.
That's right.
I vote because one way is better than the other, I feel. The state, I give, if you want to call me voting, giving support, or me paying taxes, giving support, no. One I do because I feel like I have an option to go one way or the other for, you know, it's a very limited action that we have because, you know, yes, I vote for somebody because I'd rather not vote. Like it's one of the
participating in a civic ritual, some sort of civic.
It's one of the few freedoms that I have, and it makes you actually feel like, if only for a day, that your opinion and your ideas and your thoughts matter.
You're fooling yourself.
No, I'm not fooling myself because I said only for a day. I understand.
For that day,
it feels like it matters.
But I think sort of that's one way the state tries to gain this legitimacy.
Well, the other is paying taxes. It's because you have to, or you go to jail.
That's right. And this is what I'm talking about. What the state is, right? It is the group of people who says, either fill out this form. If you don't fill out this form, we'll fine you. And if you don't pay the fine, we'll summons you to court. And if you don't show up to your summons to court, we'll send sheriffs to round you up. And if you resist the sheriffs when they round you up, they'll shoot you in the face. It is a group of people who sort of think, it is legitimate for me as the state, as this group of authority figure, to initiate violence against private, ordinary citizens.
There's one thing that we still have left from our forefathers and their ideals, because their ideals and their ideas about what the government should be and stuff, they're gone. Let's not joke around. They're completely gone and out the window. Because the government at this point, they do whatever they want, and they'll find a way to make it seem constitutional. If there's one thing we have left, is the government can do all that to you, it's going to take them 10 years. Each one of those steps is going to take them a year and a half. Because I'm going to appeal, and I'm going to do this and that. And over the process, yes, I'll end up getting bent over and fucked. But it's going to take them a little while to do that.
You hope. There's some of the incidents we're going to be talking about in this podcast and in future episodes, sort of the instantaneous punishment that is doled out at the point. Recently, just a spate of police officers initiating the punishment right at the scene of the crime, or the scene of the perceived crime, or the perceived of the non-compliance with a state directive. Cops are dishing it out right there with tasers. So you're sort of saying it takes them 10 years. Yeah, maybe sometimes, but sometimes not. I mean, sometimes these prosecutors get overzealous. They hire. We're going to talk about all these things in order. Bad forensic science that railroads people, hiring, and sort of finding doctor shopping for testimony against defendants. Like the state will railroad you, and sometimes it's slow, but lots of time and more often now than ever, it's getting faster.
Well, hold on. So let me stop you here for a second, because I'm with you. The state can railroad you at any time they want, and unjustly. But let's be real. If you're talking, you want to talk about bad forensic science. If you're in a position, if you're in a case where forensic science is being used, something awful will happen. Can we agree on that? Because they're not bringing forensic science into my speeding case or my marijuana
Not
case.
true.
What forensic science?
They're using those machines. They're using your blood alcohol test.
That there's weed in the bag. They need a machine to tell me that there's weed in my car.
They take that to a lab.
Well, I understand they test it. I got weed in my car. That's great. You don't need forensic science to go to court and say he had weed in his car or he was drinking and driving.
Okay, but
yes, you need forensic, for the blood alcohol.
Oh no, but sometimes they'll just say, like you didn't have weed amongst your car, you had dirt and dust, and they'll say we found trace amounts of marijuana residue in his car.
But they're grasping.
Holy shit! Yeah,
they're grasping at that point. And if they're really going to tie up, they're not going to tie up the court system for we found trace amounts. If that's the only thing they got me on, trace amounts of marijuana in my car, that's going to get thrown out in 30 seconds after my lawyer gets up there. 30 seconds.
If you have
he's going to laugh at the prosecutor, look at the judge, and say, "Really?"
Except for when you have
really?
when you're poor, you're indigent, you don't speak English, you have a public defender assigned for you who doesn't care, doesn't get paid any more or less if they win or lose cases, and in fact is just
their career can differ. The roads
sure.
So I'm going to go down. If they lose every case, they're not going to make it.
So you're talking about a case of simple possession or whatever it was you sort of got in there, but I'm telling you this is being used certainly in murder trials, when they find who they think is a suspect, they will use bad forensic science to railroad the jury. And by doing that, they exclude the other suspects who actually might have been the real culprits. So this is a huge problem.
Because one of the underlying things that we're talking about here with the government's supposed to represent the people. And let's be honest, people want someone to go to jail when little Susie down the street gets murdered. They really, I think the mass amounts don't really care if the person's innocent. As long as someone is held responsible and someone is being punished, everyone sleeps better at night. They do. And even if it comes out and that person has a legitimate chance for an appeal, or there's really some shady stuff went on, people want results. And the government is there to give the people results and make them feel better at night. So the government knows people. They know people. That's how they operate as well as they do. They know the mob. Because people are a mob. They're just there to satisfy the mob. As long as the mob are happy, even if the unsilent minority, or even majority.
The silent minority.
Whatever.
The silent majority. All right.
Either one is getting fucked. They're not saying anything. And they're not having problems. As long as the masses, the mob, is happy and saying, you know what? Someone's sitting on death row for little Susie's murder. Do they really want to look into the facts? Do they really want to sit down and read, oh, you know what?
Some people would prefer
again,
that.
The silent minority.
Let's listen to what Albert J. Nock has to say about it. He says, if we look beneath the surface of public affairs, we discern a fundamental fact, that there is a great redistribution of power between society and the state. This fact interests the student of civilization. What we can understand here, what we understand
let me tell you something about Mr. Knock there.
I haven't even said anything. Hold
you
on.
Paused, and your reading is
It's unfortunately none too well understood that just as the state has no money of its own, so it has no power of its own. All the power it has is what society gives it, plus what it confiscates from time to time on one pretext or another. There's no other source from which state power can be derived. Therefore, every assumption of state power, whether by gift or seizure, leaves individuals in society with so much less power. There is never nor can there be any strengthening of state power without a corresponding or roughly equivalent depletion of social power. This is from Albert J. Nock, his book called Our Enemy, the State. So we're
let me tell you, that's why they have us set up. That's why the federal government keeps robbing states of their power. Delaware wants to institute legalized gambling on sports betting,
sure,
and stuff like that. And
California wants legal medical marijuana.
Louisiana had a drinking age. Was it Louisiana or Mississippi? I think it was Mississippi, of 18.
Mm-hmm.
So they say, you know what? People are driving from other states across the border and buying beer. Is, you know what? If you don't conform to us, we're taking away your interstate highway fund.
Sure.
The federal government has taken so much power from the state, but there's two levels there to leave the people, the mob that I was speaking about,
right,
powerless. They like you were saying, they lead us to believe on that one day every year that we have power to change things by electing this person instead of this person. Well, we really don't. It's just who we feel is the lesser of two evils, is the way I see it. Who may be looking out a little bit more for your interest than the other guy. When really, I've never figured out whose interest they really are looking at.
I don't know. Butler Schaefer said this is a childish fantasy.
Really,
this is a childish fantasy that we can no longer afford to indulge in.
It's their lobbyists,
Matt, how
it's their
dare
friends.
You? How dare you?
What do you mean, how dare me?
You look at...
They can only benefit as individuals so much. They're looking out for their friends. They're looking out for...
Yes, they're looking out for
their lobbyists.
That's themselves, right? That's their personal interest. Because they want to help their friends. Because if they help their friends, they help themselves.
Well, I understand. It's a crock that they get to vote on their own pay raises.
There you go.
They're gonna, even though it doesn't take place the next term, it's a crock. It's completely... I should vote on their pay raises. I should tell them how much they make. We as a people should tell the governor, we as a people should set how much he makes a year. It should be a multiple choice question.
You're just talking about...
And you know what? If he's up for re-election, I should say, you know what? If he's re-elected, he should make this amount of money. And I'm electing him, and he should make this amount of money.
The problem is bigger than that. The problem is not just the elected representatives who are voting on their own pay raises. Who else is voting on their own pay raises? All the government employees. They are sometimes unionized, but they vote they absolutely would always vote for the politician who promises to raise the pay of the people.
Did Obama really make... Is there really a law being made about... Because it came down to my company. We were talking about it. We have 3 people can start a union now. How 3 people in my store could get together and say, you know what, we're a union. We're unionizing. And there's a certain law that I was reading about.
Are you talking about card check?
I don't know what I'm talking about. I'm just talking.
So a lot of legislation that was being pushed, that's pro-union legislation, is this card check, which will allow a union to take place on an open vote. It will allow everybody to sort of see if you vote or not. It won't be a secret ballot anymore. And when it's not a secret ballot, the fear and pressure and intimidation that can go on is sort of what everyone's worried about. Because now the union, it's really they pressure you to sort of vote for the union. 3 guys can get together and sort of demand this vote or card check. Mm-hmm. But if they have a lot of influence, persuasion, and they're willing to be tough about it or
I'll find out more about it and we'll talk.
But I think you're talking about card check.
I think I'm talking about something else. I'd like to take one quick second to talk about something great happened in 1829. A little-known brewery was started in... they came up with this beer. It's a great beer. It's Yingling Lager. I love it. It's one of the cheapest beers out there. It's great. Drink it all the time. It's my favorite.
Is it one
beer.
of the cheapest? It's a great.
It
beer.
really is.
It's a great.
It
beer.
really is. $6. It's $6 for. I just paid $6 for a six pack.
$6.
$1 beer.
You can't beat that.
You can't beat that. Miller Lite costs pretty much the same, and all the other domestics and stuff.
Much
It's
better.
a delicious beer.
Damon Lager.
I just wanted to take a second to let everyone know that.
Pottsville, Pennsylvania.
But Pottsville, Pennsylvania.
Keep
Great place.
it coming, guys.
So back to I kind of took us off on the union thing there. The state's power is controlled the way that the federal government, because I was reading what you were talking about here a minute ago, and I really thought they were talking when they said state, when they keep saying state in here, I didn't realize they were talking about a state not necessarily being Virginia, California, Pennsylvania, Florida, or any of that stuff. It's just the state is the big brother. It's the
government apparatus.
It's the government apparatus,
right? Fairfax
right.
County.
It's any of them.
Sure.
All the way down to the lowest level, all the way up to the
The
highest.
most totalitarian ones are oftentimes the local.
What really bothers me, because we've had this conversation before, I have a big problem with centralized government power, and not the states not having power to run their own stuff, and the federal government acts like states do, and they give leeway here and there. They give us a little bit just so we don't rebel. They got to give a little bit here and there. But overall, they control what Virginia wants to do or Delaware wants to do. They're fighting Delaware on this legalized betting. They fight all these places, and the votes in West Virginia so that West Virginia can have table games. I would go to West Virginia all the time and spend hundreds of dollars there if they had table games. Because I can't go bet
hundreds of dollars.
Well, it's not about rich. It was hundreds of dollars, all right? But I can't go to Atlantic City. I want to go to the Tropicana, and I want to bet on horses. I want to bet on dogs, and I want to play blackjack, and I want to throw some roulette, and then I want to go to a strip club, and then I want to get a hooker, but that's a whole nother situation.
I want to get a couple
together,
hookers, but I only have $100.
Right.
I lost it all on horse racing.
Right. But you have to go all over America to really feel all your rights, because each state has different. You got to go to Atlantic City to be able to play blackjack, or Vegas,
or an Indian casino,
or an Indian casino. But I still got to go. I still got to travel. Sure. I got to go to Dover to watch dogs race. There's some places in Maryland I can go watch horse racing. But you go out to West Virginia, you got slots and horse racing. Because I got anxiety or glaucoma or depression, I got to go to California to try to get some weed, and they're not going to give me anything.
Not anymore,
because I'm from
more
Virginia.
States.
Not Virginia. Okay, well I got to drive to Massachusetts. I don't want to drive to Massachusetts.
The closest.
But are they going to accept me because I'm at? Do I really go to Massachusetts and see a doctor?
Prostitution's legal in Rhode Island too, indoors.
What the hell does that even mean?
You asked about hookers.
Yeah, well, what do you mean I got to be indoors? I got to have sex with her indoors? Or there's a place indoors?
They can't have streetwalkers. But if you go indoors and negotiate sex for money, Rhode Island won't stop you. Which is nice. I mean, you're talking
I'm
about
at a loss there. I'm sorry about that. That we're not supposed to have dead air, but I don't know. You know what? I'm not even getting into that. Okay? Rhode Island has their own issues. It's great. I believe they were the one, actually. It was one of those states where it's, some of the different states and the different laws that they make, it is really great. If they have anything, just to prove a point. There's one state, I believe it's actually Rhode Island, where you don't have to wear your seatbelt. It's not a law. It's like the one state in the union. It's not a law where you have to wear a seatbelt, because it's infringing upon your rights.
Yeah, it's very totalitarian.
And there was one in Michigan.
My question is, what do you think the
where
state
they can't?
is?
And one in Michigan. Yeah, don't tread on me, baby. There's one. I just heard about it today. There was one law in Michigan that I thought was really great, where it's just, and it's kind of ridiculous because, yeah, it is going to cost me tax dollars to take care of said drunk driver who doesn't have insurance, who goes and crashes and doesn't have his seatbelt on, because it's his right not to have a seatbelt on, crashes into a tree, doesn't have insurance, and my tax dollars end up paying for his hospital costs. Like, yes, I understand it's for the public benefit, but if you're going to tell me these things and the government's going to regulate whatever the hell they want. Obama regulating cigarettes, biggest crock I've ever heard. Like, I understand. And yes, I understand. 16, 17, or 18-year-old, 22-year-old kids don't understand the consequences of what they're doing. They don't understand.
Why do you say that?
Well, because
when did you start
they
smoking?
think...
When did you start smoking?
2 months before I was 18.
Did you see people with lung cancer? Have you seen people die of lung cancer?
Yes.
You have family members who die of lung cancer? So how did you say you
but
don't know what you're getting into?
Well, you don't know what you understand, but those are when you're young. Those things are so far off.
Right.
Those
Absolutely.
things seem like emphysema, heart disease. I'm not going to have a heart attack. That's when I'm 50. That's so far away.
Right.
You don't realize. But, what they don't understand
why are you invalidating
lights,
that choice?
is they now on cigarettes have to put...
Why are you invalidating that choice? They made a choice, and they had a discount value, and they said, I want to smoke now and deal with the consequences later. That's a valid choice. You said they might have made the wrong bargain with their future selves. They might later think that, I made the wrong choice, but at the time, using all the evidence they had available, they made a choice. And
right.
Congratulations, that's being an adult.
Okay. So,
and the problem
if that's true, why is the government able to tell me that you can't have light cigarettes and ultralight cigarettes and full body cigarettes? Like, it is about flavor, yes, because those 18-year-old kids, I didn't realize lights doesn't mean they're a little bit better for you. Ultralights mean they're a little bit better than that. Kids don't understand that kind of stuff.
What?
Listen to me. Did I just say kids don't understand? Wow.
You just mean they're grabbing Marlboro Reds and just getting crazy?
Yeah, and getting crazy. I smoked Newports for my first couple months. They were awesome. But those things were brutal.
No, look, tobacco companies...
I was taking bong hits of cherry tobacco. Give me a break.
And why shouldn't you?
Well...
right? Why shouldn't you have?
You put a little ice in there, you're good.
This is we live in a world of amazing abundance, right? Amazing abundance. A diversity of activities you can engage in, experiences that you can experience. You live in the richest country in the world. You have parents and grandparents and great-grandparents who worked to the bone to provide this sort of abundance that you see around you. Enjoy it. Enjoy it. Experience this experience. If you like it, stick with it. If you don't like it, you can find another experience that you like. But this is what living in a world that's complicated choices. To have one bureaucrat or sets of bureaucrats in a government office sort of deciding which experiences Matt is allowed to partake in and which experiences are verboten, this is absolutely absurd. And we should only ever look at it as an absurdity.
Because you want to know something, as someone who likes to experience things and do something, you know what the funnest experiences are?
Breaking the law.
Breaking the law. God bless them. I disagree with everything that they do, and you're right. I agree with you to a point. Would marijuana really be that cool if you weren't breaking the law? I'm lying. It would.
It would be that cool.
But you gotta at some point, because we are free. We are the freest nation in the world.
No,
because
that's
right.
another
You're right.
mistake.
Amsterdam is a freer country than we are.
Yours not.
No, there are.
We've sort of already talked about. The most mundane.
You can go live out in the fucking safari and be free. You can go live out in the forest and be free in Canada. You can go in Australia and live out in the outback and be as free as you want to be free. And I don't know much about Australian government, but I don't think they're really going to hate on you that much.
Unless you're Aborigine. Then they're
going to put you in. Hey, but they're
getting better about that.
They're about 300 years behind the times, but they're trying to catch up. Give them a break. I don't know, man. I don't know.
What's pernicious about this? It's creeping, and it's slow, and it takes a toll. And I think we're at a moment in time. That's what this podcast is about. We've sort of come to another nexus point, another crossroads, where I think the 20th century was the century of big government. We had big government wars, World War I, World War II, right? We had big government programs, the Great Depression. We had NASA, the space race. We had this era of big
Which,
government.
how we're not giving all our money to that, like 50% of the government budget should be going to NASA. But that's for another time. We'll get into that.
You're out of
later.
your mind.
No, I'm not. Because that's the progress of where we need to go now. Because we're destroying this planet. We need to get ready to bounce or stop destroying it. The latter is not going to happen. We need.
I would, but what? Look, there are private industries.
Nope, I said that's for another time. We'll get into that another time.
But I'm sort of telling you, there is no. Hopefully, as we explore in the show and we go forward with the show, you're going to understand there is no place in a civilized world for government. They have no role to play. There is nothing that, like Albert Nock was saying.
Who is going to stop King George from coming and taking my shit? You? No. Me?
Yes.
I only have a couple guns.
Right?
I can't take them down.
But you can band together in an association. There was Minutemen who took them down. Yes. It was snipers behind the jungle.
No, because you're going a whole another direction. I'm with you. The federal government needs to be as limited. All the federal government needs to do is worry about my interstates. Make sure we don't get invaded by anybody. That's all we need them for. Is for my interstates and make sure we don't get invaded by anybody and make sure no state starts doing some serious crazy shit that really affects everyone else. Other than that, they need to shut the fuck up and let me pick what state I want to live in. Each one can set their own set of rules, and everyone can pick where they want to go live. New York City could be a ghost town tomorrow. The politicians in New York...
Why do you have to change your geography to change your legal regime? Why do you have to change your location to change your legal regime?
That's the world we live in. Why do people leave countries? Why are there refugees?
Right.
Why do people leave?
I'm just saying I think there's a better solution. I think
this is going to be great. What is that, Scotty? What's the solution?
A private, voluntary, cooperative place. You can have your own.
Because you know what it sounds like. You want to establish towns, almost based upon churches. You have a church in every town, and you belong to that church. You're going to kind of say this the same thing about state that I was just saying, but like each town. You're basically doing what I did with states. Is you're saying each town is because if you're gonna go bind together. Stop. You stop for a second. You're gonna go bind together with your neighbors. What happens when you get together with your neighbors? You say, you know what? These guys are fucking kooks. I don't want anything to do with them. Right. I don't want anything with their beliefs. You're gonna move. You're gonna move because if you're binding together for a government.
If someone was invading to destroy your property, and you needed help to defend your property, you could go enlist help. You could
how? What do I have to offer somebody?
Well,
I own a tiny little 1,000 square foot house on the edge of Leesburg.
Well, clearly,
who am I going to go enlist, and how am I going to convince them to come help me?
That's my point. Do you think that this invasion is only going to occur on you? Do you think the invasion might have repercussions?
Scott Clark wants to take my house. I live next door to you. You want to come take my house? You say, and you know what? You tell all the other neighbors. It's cool. It's cool. It's cool. I ain't gonna fuck with your house. I just want Matt's house. I'm just gonna take Matt's house.
And I pay them.
It is because I remember somebody maybe about 70 years ago doing a similar thing. It's cool. I'm just gonna take this little place. You and I are cool. I ain't gonna come over there. I ain't gonna invade you. I'm just gonna take Austria-Hungary or Poland. How'd that work out for everybody? Because it's the same kind of thing. Is if you convince all the other neighbors, I'm just taking Matt's house. I'm gonna overpower Matt. I'm gonna kick him out of here.
Right.
He's fucked. Whatever he's got to go do whatever he wants to do. But I'm taking his house. I'm annexing his house onto my land. There's no one to stop you from doing this. The neighbors think it's cool because they don't like Matt anyways because he throws wild parties all night. Cool. Now you got my house. What about me? Who's looking out for me then? Nobody. I gotta go build a house somewhere else.
You don't have to build a house.
No, I gotta come in your house in the middle of the night and kill you to get my house back. What kind of world are you talking about living in?
That's my point, Matt. That the violence that we see is rare. Anyway, it is an aberration. Where does the violence originate?
Because you have Big Brother leading over.
I disagree.
Because common sense
provides the reason not to go steal Matt's house. Because if I steal Matt's house, what prevents all the other neighbors from realizing later, let's just steal Scott's house, because he is violent and unpredictable.
They had a society like what you're talking about.
Who?
They did. The South during the Civil War. When all the people, all the grown men and able-bodied men went off to war to fight for the South and went to go fight the North. Who was left in the towns? The old men, the crippled people. They were the police because the government, the South made its own government.
Sure.
But they were not there to police anybody. They were not there to make sure justice prevailed. They were not to make sure that things went the way that their new constitution or the way that they saw things going. They weren't there because they were all fighting the North. So there were mobs of men, cripples and old guys, and just guys who got out of going to war, who ran the towns, who could rape women, who could steal, rob, and pillage people and do whatever they want. And there was no repercussions. People don't read about this much. They don't hear about it. It happened. It happened. The North had a little more control over it because they were the North. The South, they for some god-awful reason, went into Gettysburg. Who was around to police anything except these people?
Right.
So if you were an old guy with 3 13-year-old sons, or well, I don't know how that, maybe he had quadruplets or whatever, you owned your town because you know how small these towns were? You would be in charge. There would be 3 or 4 people, men, in charge of 25 women in a town. What justice took place then? Whatever justice those guys felt was necessary.
Yeah,
they were the law.
Sure.
And there was no one to check them. It's the whole purpose. Yes, I totally agree. The system is out of whack. The shit that is going on is crazy. I understand.
But it's inevitable. You cannot separate it.
It is all inevitable. It is human nature. That is why there has been no society that has lasted beyond a certain period of time.
Right, and I think
some places have good ones. You can have a totally utopia of society. It's going to crumble. It's going to last 400, 500,
I'm
100
not talking
years.
about utopia.
I'm just talking about any society.
I'm talking about dismantling the state.
And you're dismantling the state. If your system that is implemented
you're trying to talk about the Civil War. This is a time of a massive war of man against man. I mean, this is and in war, horrible things happen. The Union raped plenty of women in the South. The Union legalized rape in New Orleans. Northern soldiers, when they occupied New Orleans, issued a law that says if a woman acts up, soldiers can rape her, no questions asked. Like they pass. So, but this is war and rape has always been a weapon of war in Africa, in Iraq, and Afghanistan. That's what
Germany,
soldiers
everywhere.
do. That's what soldiers do. They rape.
Well,
like
you
that's
don't
the
have
point.
women. You don't. You're fighting. You're
So
all
the
pent
point
up.
is,
I gotta sit next to you.
my point
and
is,
listen to
if you don't have a state, you won't have war.
See, but a state. This is where I have a problem. You're talking about a state as
a government. You sort of asked. Okay, here, Matt. You sort of asked.
So you're.
You asked. I want
preaching. I want to be clear. I want to make a clear point, and then I want to hear what you have to say.
Right.
Are you preaching anarchy right now?
Yes.
Okay. Go ahead.
You sort of. I want the state to stop people from invading me, right, or stop people from invading, right? But the state provokes attack. The state begs. The state. The fact that a state apparatus exists endangers foreign countries, right? Because they will have the same concern about that state coming to invade them. So you will have sort of an arms race built up. You will have this belligerent back and forth. You will sort of have this national competition because we have these borders and we have this national pride, and we'll sort of want to. I'm Britain and you're Germany. We got to be better than them. You'll sort of encourage this belligerence by having a state. You will if you're the United States especially, you'll send secret police called the CIA, you'll send them all over there to wreak havoc wherever you want and sort of make people sort of distrust you. So I'm saying that you have this
with you to a point.
If you
because that's why you even have a homeowners association. How pissed is your wife going to be when your next door neighbor, the person across the street, paints his house neon green? Neon green. You're cool with that? You're cool with that?
I'm cool with that.
You're cool with that. Your wife's cool with that. It glows in the dark.
But if you're not...
The house literally glows in the dark. You're cool with that.
If you're not cool with that, what can you do? You can negotiate. Is your neighbor so far away that you cannot talk to him or her?
Have you met... I don't think you've met many people. I don't think you've met many people.
I think you've met
people are stubborn, people are hard-headed, and people are selfish. They do... I am all three of them. And I do whatever the hell I want to do, whenever the hell I want to do it. And fuck you for telling me otherwise.
Okay.
You cannot have everyone having that attitude in the world.
But Matt, people don't actually really have that attitude.
No, they do.
They
do. I'm a functioning member of society. I actually have that attitude. I actually have neighbors. I don't know if you know that.
You can't even imagine the amount of cooperation you actually engage in during the day. There are only very select times where you actually defect, where you actually...
Is my neighbor wrong for calling the cops when I'm shooting bottle rockets off at 3:30 in the morning? Crunk and screaming?
Yes, he's wrong.
And then tossing them?
He's wrong for
calling
calling the
wrong?
cops. He should just go negotiate with you.
You know what?
He can talk to you.
That's absolutely...
Why would he call the police?
You know what? I'm not going to argue with it. That's actually a very good point. He should. Because a phone call, if he came over and said, dude... But here's the thing. If he came over and said, dude, keep it down.
Right.
You know why I'll say okay? Because he did have a common courtesy, and I do actually care.
Yeah.
But most of the people, it's because he did have the common courtesy to come do it. If we don't the next time, he is calling the cops. And I am going to go to jail and get tasered and all that other stuff you were just talking about a little while ago. It's that threat of Big Brother keeps people in check. There are a lot of people who are, like you're talking about, reasonable, negotiable people who will listen to reason and will talk to you and find a compromise. There are a small group of people who will say fuck you and shoot you in the face for coming over here and talk about how I painted my house.
Right.
There are those people. And it's for people, it is for that small group of people that we need that. We need that.
How disgusting is this then? We live in a $14 trillion economy. We have a government that takes like half of that for its own uses and for its own purposes to protect us from this very small percent of pricks. Like, you have a massive apparatus who is sort of agglomerated power stuff and is not, and has, once you sort of set it in motion, once you sort of set up, look, we need a bunch of guys who are going to stop the pricks from running around and being pricks all the time. Once you have this state in motion, in fact, it's for them, it's not really hard to keep the pricks in line. So they start getting bored. So they start making rules for other things. So they start making agricultural rules. They start telling farmers how farmers have to be. They start doing all these other things because they were bored stopping the pricks, and they weren't content just sitting around waiting for the pricks to act up. So I'm saying,
let's talk about... Okay, let's talk about... Yes.
Well, Matt, I'd love to explore this further with you. But we're 38 minutes into this podcast, 38:55. It's about time to sign off. You've been listening to Enemies of the State, but if you've been listening to Matt, it probably sounds more like you've been listening to Champions of the State. I'd like to thank Yingling Lager. I'd like to thank Albert J. Nock, Lou Rockwell, Will Grieg, as intellectual influences. Hope you keep listening to episode 1, Enemies of the State. Hope you keep listening. We're just going to have more discussions. Trying to get from there to here, right? This stated society that we live in, to understanding the boon and blessings that are available in a stateless society. Talk to you next time.